Thank you for watching my presentation. My name is Dave Westenberg, and I'm from Missouri University of Science and Technology, Missouri S&T for short. We're located in Rolla, Missouri. To kick things off, I'd like to thank ASM for this incredible recognition. It's an honor to follow in the footsteps of prior Carski Award winners who have inspired me throughout my career. In particular, I'd like to thank my nominators and supporters, Patty Shields, Erica Suchman, Sue Katz-Amburn, who represent the hundreds of colleagues who are part of the amazing ASMQ community that's inspired me to be a better educator. If you're not familiar with ASMQ, ASMQ is the ASM Conference for Undergraduate Educators, an annual meeting every summer that brings together the 300 or more educators interested in bettering their teaching and scholarship of teaching and learning. Throughout this presentation, I hope I'll be able to provide you a sense of how valuable it is to be part of this ASMQ family that ASM has done such a great job of fostering over the years. So to kick off my presentation, I'll start off a little bit with my path, how I got to this point, and talk a little bit about the things that I'm currently doing in my career. So I got my undergraduate degree from Michigan State University in microbiology and public health. And that's an integral part of who I am as an educator. I really didn't know what I wanted to do in microbiology at the time. Originally, I wanted to be a veterinarian, just like a lot of our students today. They have one career goal and you get into college and move in a different direction. And I was very fortunate to have some professors at Michigan State who really inspired me and motivated me and encouraged me to go into graduate studies. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Briefly, before I started my PhD at UCLA, I spent a little time at DIFCO Labs in their quality control division, and then moved on to UCLA to get my PhD in microbiology and molecular genetics, where I worked in the lab of Rob Gonzalez, where I studied anaerobic respiration in E. coli. But I got some exposure to the kinds of research I was really interested in. Some folks in the lab were working on methanogens. And that was really an inspiration for me for my days at Michigan State, getting to work with some of the archaea. And so I had an opportunity after finishing up my PhD to do a postdoc with Gerhard Gottschalk. I met him when he came to give a seminar at UCLA, and he encouraged me to apply for an Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship. And I was a little clueless about what was involved, but I managed to be successful in getting a von Humboldt Fellowship and was able to spend 2 wonderful years in Göttingen working with methanogens. I came back to the US for a few years to do a postdoc at Dartmouth College with Dr. Mary Lou Garino. Was on a USDA grant studying plant microbe interactions, Brady Rhizobium japonicum soybean symbiosis. And that's what I took with me to my career when I began my faculty job at Missouri S&T, which at the time was known as University of Missouri Rolla, UMR. And so I followed the normal path of progressing through rank. I did a brief sabbatical 1 semester at Missouri Columbia. I did about 6 months at the University of Marburg with a renewal of my von Humboldt Fellowship. And now I can, for the first time publicly, say that starting in September, I've been promoted to professor at Missouri S&T. So it's been a long struggle, but I have to really thank ASM for that. If it wasn't for my interactions with ASM, the colleagues I met who encouraged me and supported me along the way, helping me to frame my promotion package, I don't think it would have been successful, because there's that challenge for us that are focused primarily on teaching and the scholarship of teaching and learning, and recognizing the value of that for promotion cases. And my connections with ASM were incredibly valuable in allowing me to help frame my case to get to where I am now. So since I just went through the process of promotion, my presentation's kind of laid out like my promotion dossier. I'm going to walk you through my teaching, talk about my inspirations, the courses I teach, and some of the approaches and where they came from. I'll talk a little bit about my research, some of the projects I've worked on over the years, and primarily focus on my collaborations. I'm at Missouri S&T, which is an engineering university, and taking advantage of the opportunities that come from collaborating with colleagues from across campus has been incredibly valuable for me, and particularly my students, to get to work on projects that many students wouldn't get to work on. And then I'll wrap it up with a brief overview of my outreach activities. And when I talk about service, it's really, for me, it's about my outreach. So let's talk about teaching. So first, a little bit about my inspirations. And so, as I mentioned, my time as an undergrad student was very important in formulating who I am. And my main inspiration was taking a class on microbial diversity with John Bresnak. This was my last quarter, my last semester. I didn't really have much understanding of where I was going to go with my career. I just knew I enjoyed microbiology, but getting a chance to work in a lab where I really had more freedom to explore and try different things, that's what really kind of changed my perspective. And John was very influential in inspiring me to go on and get a PhD. And that's something I take with me to today with I approach my classes. You know, I waited till the last quarter of my last year at Michigan State as an undergraduate. And I don't want my students have to wait that long to find those things that really inspire them and move them on. And so my goal is to try and get students exposed to these types of experiences as early on in their career as I can. And later on, I had the great fortune to take the microbial diversity course at Marine Biological Laboratories when John co-taught it with Marty Dworkin. And again, that just reignited my passion for microbes and provided me materials and resources that I've brought with me throughout my career. So that experience, again, reconnecting with my undergraduate days was valuable for taking me where I am as an educator. And the other most important inspiration is my daughter, Erica. I go into education and taking with the perspective of these students that are in my classes, what if they were my own child? Again, I'm not trying to be a parent. I'm just trying to view of, I want to make sure that I treat them with the same respect I'd want anybody to treat my own child. And so that's very important to look at students as who they are and look at the paths they come along with, because that's another inspiration there, is that these students have gone through many different challenges along the way. They've had different ups and downs. They come from different backgrounds, and it's not always obvious. You know, take what they do at face value, but realize there's a lot more deeper behind what's going on and the challenges they face, and recognize that and respect that, and hopefully help them to overcome those challenges and not make it a hindrance to their education. And my last inspiration is K-12 teachers. I've had the fortune of starting to work with K-12 teachers early in my career, working in professional development with some colleagues who were very important mentors to me. Dr. Sam in our statistics department and the late Ellen Pringle in our physics department. We worked together on professional development for elementary and middle school teachers, integrating math and science. And my interaction with these K-12 teachers was invaluable. Really, everything I know about teaching comes from interacting with K-12 teachers, because that motivates me seeing what work they put into teaching students and getting to where they are to come into my classrooms. I have to respect that and to honor what those students have gone through to get to me. But more importantly, I've seen by interacting with the teachers where these kids come from. A lot of our teachers are from high need schools and rural school districts, things that are very under-resourced, and the challenges they face to educate their students. And so being aware of what challenges our students face getting to us, that puts my whole teaching into a whole different perspective. So let's talk about my teaching for a moment. And here's the list of classes I've taught over the years. And it may look a little overwhelming here, but realize this is 23 years. In reality, the focus of my teaching is on 3 classes: microbiology, pathogenic microbiology, and virology. And I have labs that go along with each of these classes. The other classes are classes I've taught on and on over the years. Right now, I'm currently teaching a microbes in man class this summer. But that's what I'm focusing on for my teaching requirements. But the real question you're probably asking is, what's my approach to teaching? And my approach is to make sure that every class I teach is student-centered and focused on active learning. That's what we know is the best way to teach. That's what helps students overcome some of those challenges they face getting to our classrooms. And so within that context, my objective is to help students build connections, to understand how the material they're learning is relevant to their lives. And I do a lot of this through storytelling, through games, and through humor. And when I mean storytelling, it's not me telling stories, although I do that as an example, is I want to use that as a tool for them to communicate with me, show me through whatever their own individual talents might be, what they've learned. Now, I may have one view of what learning looks like, but they may have a different perspective, and being able to work together and find a common bond, that's critical. And storytelling allows us to do that. Games allow us to do that. Humor allows us to do that. And what formulated a lot of these perspectives is, again, ASM. particularly ASMQ. This Conference for Undergraduate Educators is an invaluable resource. It provides us the way to learn new tools, to learn new ideas, to present new ideas and get some feedback on colleagues. So I picked up new ideas, I've refined ideas from interacting with the colleagues I meet at ASMQ every summer. And then ASM provides us with valuable professional development opportunities, the Biology Scholars Program, BioQuest workshops, lots of different ways to hone our skills. And in particular, if we want to use scientific teaching in the classroom, we need to know how to assess learning, what learning looks like and what do we want to use to assess that. And that's led me to opportunities to participate in summer institutes on scientific teaching. The National Academy of Sciences put these programs together with HHMI to really teach faculty backwards design, scholarship of teaching and learning, and assessment strategies. And more importantly, in recent years, inclusive teaching, a whole new perspective I'm bringing into my classes in recent years, try and make my classes accessible to all students. And I've really benefited because a lot of these interactions have brought me to my relationship with HHMI BioInteractive. The opportunity to serve as a higher education teacher ambassador has been incredibly valuable to broaden my professional development experiences, to try out new activities in the classroom, to help develop new activities, and to work with, again, colleagues from across the country, doing our best to teach our best. So now let's look at the research side of things. And so a big part of my research is undergraduate research. We are our master's granting department. It's only been master's granting less than I've been there. So most of my research is undergraduate oriented. I've had over 150 students, probably close to 200 students in my lab working on various research projects. And what really drives a lot of those research projects is this quote from Rita Caldwell, our former president of ASM, former director of the National Science Foundation. And here's a quote from one of her presentations that I heard that I really struck with me. This idea where all the things happening in science are happening at these interfaces between the physical sciences, engineering, biology, and the social sciences. This is where the real excitement, this is where things thrive. And so this is where I want to be in my research and introduce my students to that so they can see where they can go beyond their current standings, to teach them about innovation and entrepreneurship and other ideas that might come along the way. And so a lot of my career is built around collaborations with engineers and scientists in other disciplines. And so the bulk of my research is rhizobium legume symbiosis, originating from my postdoc days. I study Bradyrhizobium, japonicum, and soybean. And so that drives a lot of my research. We're looking at things like quorum sensing and drought tolerance in the plants. But I also have the opportunity, because of my experience with plant microbe interactions, to work on phytoremediation projects with Dr. Joel Birkin, who's in our Civil, Architectural, Environmental Engineering department. He's an environmental engineer that uses trees for doing bioremediation. And so we're looking at how can we use microbes to enhance this process, to improve groundwater cleanup, soil cleanup, improve on the removal of contaminants from a variety of environments. And so that's been a very valuable and robust research experience. And very early in my time at S&T, I got involved with antibacterial biomaterials, working with ceramic engineers. And I know what you're thinking, what on earth does ceramics have to do with microbiology? And that surprised me as well. But when I was approached by these ceramic engineers, I was blown away by some of the ideas they had, using glass for bone and tissue repair. And not only do you repair the tissue, but can we formulate these glasses so that they cure infection, so they prevent infection from happening in the first place? And this has been an incredibly valuable resource for me for undergraduate research projects. I've had undergraduate students working on this for over 20 years. And what's really important is giving them the opportunity to be creative and come up with ideas. Some of the advances that we've made in this research has come from the perspective on the undergraduate students. See, we can do this better. We might try this process. And so being able to allow students to do that is very important in their development. More recently, I started working on some interesting projects on bioconcrete. You might have heard of concrete repairing microbes. Well, I'm working with some colleagues in architectural engineering, civil engineering, who are using microbes to take the fines from concrete recycling and convert them into materials that can be used for actually recreating concrete using calcium carbonate precipitation. So I'm working on that with Dr. Ma. Dr. Deng and I are working on ways to use these microbes to support soil structures. And so the opportunities that come from working with colleagues has been very valuable for me, but more importantly, valuable for the students, because I don't do anything in the lab. They're doing all the lab work, and they're the ones having the fun, and they're learning how to do these things better. All right, lastly, I want to talk a little bit about service. And so service to me is a big part of my career. It's supposed to be a smaller part, but that's who I am. I just love the interaction with other groups and helping out where I can. And so on campus, it's geared around students, being advisor to our ASM student chapter, we call Helix, being the chair of our pre-medicine advisory committee and advising our pre-med club, co-advising our iGEM team, our International Genetically Engineered Machines design team that competes every year in the iGEM Jamboree. Recently, I started working with the Honor Society, the National Society of Leadership and Success, and helping them rebuild their club that had almost failed. But probably the most surprising organization I work with is athletics. I serve as the NCAA faculty athletic representative, which is an NCAA mandated liaison between the faculty and the athletics. I had to oversee the academic side of student athletics. But I found this to be a very important and valuable support for my teaching and my service, because if you really think about it, coaches are teachers. Teachers are coaches. We're all in the same boat, and we can both serve our students together if we work together. So I learn a lot from coaches on how to present material to students, how to assess what they're doing, and vice versa. They've learned a lot from us. And so this has been a very helpful collaboration. And I can't overlook service to ASM. And I'm going to step on the soapbox here for a moment, but ASM is our society. ASM is built around volunteers, and it's the volunteers that make the fabric of ASM work. And so if you have the opportunity to get involved with service for ASM, do it. You'll never regret it. The benefits are uncountable. So I started working with ASM first as an officer in our Missouri branch, starting as our treasurer, and then moved up to president. I then, through my interactions with ASMQ, got to know the folks serving on the ASM Committee for K-12 Education and Outreach. So I served as a member for a while and then became chair and served as chair for 7 years. In that role, I got to work on a task force for community engagement. I got to serve on the education board and a year on the communications board. So that gave me some real insight on the value of volunteers in making ASM work. And so again, if you can get involved, get involved. The payoffs are invaluable. I have to recognize really important support I got from Amy Chang and the late Neil Baker, and the way they supported me, the opportunities they provided me to work with the K-12 Outreach Committee, serving on the Education Board, opportunities that I'm not sure I deserve, but I've certainly benefited from them throughout my career. And so now my latest service is serving as an editor in training for JIMBY, our ASM journal for microbiology and biology education, one of the top education journals in the sciences. And that gives you an idea of how important education is to ASM and how important ASM is to education and how we go in hand. So being an educator and a member of ASM is invaluable. So let's talk now about research. What do I do from that service perspective? And so it all kicked off again at an ASM meeting. I went to the general meeting in Atlanta and heard about something called Teacher Science Day. I have family in Atlanta. I thought this would be a great way to get connected with the community. And here's where I learned about how important it is to have higher education interacting with the K-12 community, the needs of the K-12 community, the support that they can benefit from, and we in higher education can benefit from those interactions. And so that really kind of opened my eyes to these opportunities. And it also opened my eyes to some great activities that I can use in my outreach later on. And so I still use activities from this book in my outreach events on campus and in the classrooms. And the ASM Teacher Science Day lasted for a few years, but like a lot of things, it evolved. And so now the opportunities for interaction come from science festivals. ASM has for many years participated in the USA Science and Engineering Festival. If you live in the DC area, go and participate, help out at the USA Science and Engineering Festival. You won't regret it. A couple hours of your afternoon spending interacting with the general public is invigorating and a way to share your love and passion for microbes. I benefited from this, again, in many ways in all parts of my career. And now these things are actually now going full circle. Now at ASM Microbe, we're kind of taking this concept and bringing hands-on activities in local areas before microbe. And so we've done that for the last couple of years. I was really looking forward to doing that at the Field Museum in Chicago for this ASM microbe. But we'll just try again next year and see where it takes us. So again, opportunities to interact with the community, with the schools. I encourage you to take advantage of them if you can. So here's what I do in the classroom outreach perspective. So I use some of those activities I picked up along the way, as well as other things that I've developed or modified for my own uses. And again, a lot of this built around my own daughter. I had opportunities to come and present in her classroom, dressing up as a plague doctor when they're learning about the plague and teaching them about adventures in the time of plague. I brought bioluminescent bacteria to her class when they're learning about the oceans. I've brought in yeast and looked at, can yeast survive on other planets when they're learning about the solar system? So it's ways for me to interact with my daughter, but also interact with the kids in the community and hopefully inspire them to careers. You know, there's nothing more rewarding than going to a t-ball game or a softball, soccer game, and parents come up to you and say, are you the germ guy? You know, that's what I'm known like in the community. So something that I'm really proud that kids remember that. And with my college students, it's about doing things like Augur events to getting them to interact with their friends and family. And so St. Patrick's Day is a big deal on our campus. The engineers declared that St. Patrick is the patron saint of the engineer. And so we have a 2-day recess in the spring where we have all sorts of events. And one of them I put on is an Augur art event. I invite my students to invite your roommate, invite your friends, invite your family, invite somebody from the community, and come on and paint with pigmented bacteria, bioluminescent bacteria, fluorescent bacteria. And you can see they come up with some very creative products. I also introduce them to connections to the microbial world through food. We talk about fermented foods in the class, and then we wrap up every semester with a microbe lunch, giving them a chance to try out different foods that may not have the experience to interact with. And it's not just the foods that are fermented, it's about foods that are processed using fermentation early on, or ingredients are come through the activities of microbes, and so bring them in connection with all these different ways that microbes make life better. And every food in here is connected to microbes in some way. And to make further connections, I invite colleagues from across campus, from other disciplines. Even our chancellors come to my microbe lunch and tried out the different microbes. And so it's a great way to build connections from our students to all aspects of their life. And what comes of this is this inspires students to engage in outreach themselves. And so as I mentioned, I co-advise our iGym team, and a big part of iGym is their human practices, putting on hands-on events in the community. And so I work with them to put on science days on campus, other campuses, visiting schools, and interacting and learning from each other with how that works out. And the outcome, the impact on those students is really impressive. And what I hope comes from this then is when our students graduate, they've built this connection to microbes, and they're going to take their microbes with them to whatever careers they go on and remember what microbes are in their lives. So that's what microbiology is all about to me, why I teach the way I teach. And thank you for following along. Thank you for watching my presentation. Reach out anytime. Here's my contact information, my website, and I look forward to hearing with you and sharing our love for microbes.